Lesson 3, Topic, Scientific Notation. Learning target, I can write numbers in scientific notation. First off, what is scientific notation? Scientific notation is a number that is multiplied by a power of 10. So it has three pieces. We have our C, which is our coefficient. And that coefficient has to be a number between 1 and 10. So 5 would work, but 12 would not. And it's always multiplied by a power of 10. So the big number is always going to be 10. And then the exponent has to just be an integer. And that, remember, is just our positive, negative, whole numbers. Convert the numbers to scientific notation. There are two steps when converting a number between standard form and scientific notation. So the first step is to figure out what is my coefficient going to be. Remember that number needs to be between 1 and 10. So I'm going to look at this number and I'm going to figure out where I could put a decimal point to make a number between 1 and 10. So in this case, it's going to be in between the 4 and the 2. Because if I put a decimal point in any other spot, I'd make a number that's too big or too small. But when I put the decimal point between the 4 and the 2, that becomes 4.259. And I don't have to include the rest of the zeros. And then it's always multiplied by a power of 10, so times 10. And I just figure out what that exponent is going to be. So I'm going to put my decimal point in my number where I want it to be. And then I'm going to look at where the decimal point actually is in my number, which is just here at the end. And then I'm going to count how many times I would have to jump place values in order to put it in that decimal point. So just jump in between each number. So 1 jump, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 jumps. I had to jump 7 times. And my exponent is going to be positive because this number starts off as a number that is bigger than 1. So your exponent will be a positive number if your number is bigger than 1, and it'll be a negative number if your number starts off as less than 1. I'd like you to try the second example, see what you can do, and then resume the video when you're ready to view the example together. Alright, so the first step is, again, to make a number that is between 1 and 10. Make that coefficient. So to put a decimal point, I would put it between this 5 and the 7 because that would become 5.74. Multiply by a power of 10. And then again, have to figure out what the exponent is. So I go from where the decimal point currently is to where I want it to be. And that was 5 jumps. But in this case, it's going to be negative 5 because this number starts off as less than 1. It's a very small decimal number, and that number is less than 1. So now we're going to talk converting numbers from scientific notation to standard form. So this just requires one step, and that step is moving that decimal place in the right amount. So we have 2.075 times 10 to the 8th power. Since my power is positive, I know that that number is bigger than 1. So I'm going to move my decimal point 8 jumps to the right. I'm going to make a number that's bigger than 1. So to do that, I'm going to take my coefficient, 2.075, and I'm going to take my decimal point and I'm going to move it 8 jumps to the right. Just doing the opposite of what we did on the previous slide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 jumps. And then those empty spaces get filled with those zeros. Last step is to just rewrite it without all that extra stuff. And add your commas. And that number is 207,500,000. Go ahead and try the next example and then resume the video when you're ready to do the exercise together. All right, we have 1.685 times 10 to the negative 4th power. I'm going to look at that power and I'm going to see that it's negative, which means my number is less than 1. Since my number is less than 1, I'm going to want to move my decimal point in the opposite direction of the last time, which is to the left. We're going to go 4 jumps to the left to make a number that is smaller than 1. So I'm going to write 1.685, and then I'm going to move that decimal point 1, 2, 3, 4 places to the right, to the left, and then fill in those empty gaps with a 0. I'm going to rewrite that out so it doesn't have all that extra stuff. And there is my number in standard form. Last step is that sometimes your calculator is going to give you a number in scientific notation, but it's not going to look the exact same as the way we write it when we write it on paper. So you can see from the images on your paper and on the screen that we have normal scientific notation. We have that coefficient, we have the times 10, and then we have the exponent, the 23rd power. When your calculator writes this, it is going to remove the times 10, and it's going to put an E in its place. So you can see the coefficient is still there. The exponent is still there, but in the middle of the coefficient and the exponent, there's a little E in the middle. I'll also show you what my calculator that I have on my Chrome extension. It looks like this, and it's very similar. You can see that there's the coefficient, the 23 at the end. This one's just a little different as it has the E as a lowercase e. And then there's a plus sign saying that my exponent is positive. But it's very similar, so it's going to have this type of look to it when you type it in on a calculator. So, if my calculator gave me 3.5E9, I would know that in scientific notation that was 3.5 times 10 to the 9th power. And then in standard form, that would be 3.5, and then I'm going to move that decimal point 9 places to the right. It's positive. I want a number that's bigger than 1. Fill all those spaces with zeros. And then if I rewrite it without all those little lines, add in my commas, and I know that that is 3,500,000,000. I want you to try the last example on your own, check your work in Edpuzzle, and then you are done with your video notes.